Welcome to the Biz Gone Social Podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social Podcast, and I'm so glad to be here. And my promise to you, as always, is I'm going to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business and your social media marketing. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. And I'm so stoked here to have Kendra Swalls with me. Welcome, Kendra.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And Kendra, I've been so stoked to talk to you because literally you're in my space. So I love to hear what other people have to say about different things. But why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey in becoming who you are today in your business?
Yeah. So I never had any plans to be an entrepreneur ever. That was never in my line of vision at all. My plan through life was to be a teacher. I went to school for education. I was an elementary school teacher for 14 years. And I enjoyed it, but I just kind of had this feeling of there's something else I want to be doing. I'm not feeling completely fulfilled. And so I thought, well, I just need a hobby. Let me just find a hobby. My husband had he's a big outdoorsman. So he had all these hobbies he would go and do. And I was like, I've always loved photography. And so I picked up a digital camera, started learning, and I was a kid who always took pictures growing up. I took a film photography class in college for fun. So I knew the basics of photography, but I started teaching myself digital photography, started taking pictures just kind of for fun of family, friends, pets, all the things. And then I had a lot of people that were like, you should start charging for this. And so it became the thing I did on summers and holidays. From teaching, I would do photography. Pretty quickly, it became a full-on business. And so in 2012, I officially launched Paisley Lane Photography. And again, it was still just sort of a part-time thing because I was teaching full-time. And what I started realizing was that I loved photography, but I got really excited about the business of running a business. I found that kind of the puzzle pieces of, okay, if I try this marketing strategy, I get this result. Or if I tweak this little wording on this thing, then people respond to it differently. And so it became this game I would play with myself of how can I keep improving and what more can I learn about business? And so in 2017, after my second daughter was born, I decided to go all in on my photography business. I left teaching behind and started running my business full time. And then I had all of these other photographers around me that I had become friends with who were asking me, tell me how you did it, teach me your ways. And I kept saying to people over and over again, it doesn't matter how good your skills are. It's about how well you run your business. And so people were kind of taking notice. I started doing one-on-one mentoring sessions, some local workshops. And then I was like, I'm saying the same things over and over and over again. Someone was like, you should start a podcast. I tried blogging. I was terrible at it. I do not blog well. I'm a talker, not a writer. And so I started my podcast, Girl Means Business, in 2019. And I kind of reverse engineered my business from that. So what started as a podcast grew into a coaching and digital product service or product business. And so instead of doing it the other way around, I kind of I do things backwards sometimes, but that's okay. And so that led me where I am now. So I still run my photography business a little more part-time than full-time. And then I do my coaching, and I have some digital courses and products that I offer. And it's typically geared towards creative entrepreneurs. So people who are a little bit more I just want to create this beautiful thing, whatever that thing is. And then they also realize, but I do have to know how to utilize marketing strategies and social media and email and all those things. So I help them kind of combine their love for the creative side with the need for the business side.
So do you still do photography?
I do. So I do. In fact, I'm recording this in my photography studio right now, but yes, I still do photography. It's very, very part-time. It's become more of I get to do it now because I really love the different tasks I take on, the different clients I take on, as opposed to I'm doing it as a full-time thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you morphed into this whole digital marketing, Instagram and email marketing. What would you say that is important about which would you say is more important? Would you say that social media is more important, or would you say that email marketing is more important?
Oh, that's like kind of asking me to pick my favorite child. I really honestly think you need both. I think they serve very different purposes. I think that I always kind of say it as like Instagram is like the cocktail party. That's where you go and you have kind of these little like introductions and small talk and everybody looks their best. And then email marketing is like the coffee shop date where you go and have an actual conversation with someone. You get to go a little deeper. And to me, that's where the sales are made. But you almost need both, because if you don't have the introduction from social media to get them into your email list, then they're not on your email list. But if you just have Instagram or social media and you don't have the deeper piece, the connection piece with email, then you may not always get the sales you're looking for. So I kind of think they have to work together. I mean, if I absolutely had to go with just one, I would probably say email marketing, because it's a little bit more of a foundational piece. Like, it's not the shiny, flashy, fun thing. It doesn't get you those instant like likes and follows and things, but it's the stable thing that every successful business owner has implemented into their business.
Absolutely. And just for the listeners, there are some people that are probably not using Instagram right now. Would you say that Instagram is for every business? Can every business use Instagram?
I mean, I think you can. I don't think that means you have to. I think that Instagram has a certain audience, just like Twitter has a specific audience, LinkedIn has a specific audience. I think you have to know where your audience is and who your audience is, and then find the platform that best suits that. I think Instagram, it's kind of like Facebook used to be, where it was like, oh, everyone has to have a Facebook page. I think a lot of people say like, oh, everyone needs to have an Instagram page because it's kind of social proof, but I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because I also believe in using your time wisely. And I don't think you have to have or be on every single platform just for the sake of being on it. I think that, for example, I know a lot of people who are really successful on LinkedIn. My audience is not on LinkedIn. So I have not invested the time in learning, and I don't have an interest in having a presence there right now, because that's not where my clientele is. But if my clientele were on LinkedIn, I would be focusing on that and not so much on Instagram. So I think you don't have to have it if that's not where your audience is.
Absolutely. I hear a lot. I go to a lot of networking groups and everything, and I hear a lot about email marketing and it's dead. And I always say, no way.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. I can track my email open rates and who's opening and stuff. And I've sent emails out for a long time now. And every once in a while, I will see somebody click on from like 2 months ago, 3 months ago. And here's the thing. And I know I've personally bought something that came through my email list that as I was deleting emails, the subject line captured my attention and I opened that email. So I feel like when people say that, they're really they don't know what they don't know, meaning that I feel like that email marketing is still very effective. Yes, you get a lot. And I when I'm promoting something, I get unsubscribes.
Oh yeah, it's going to happen. Yeah.
But that, it's still, what's your thoughts on email marketing? Do you think it's here to stay for a long, long time?
I do. I really do. And there's so many, like exactly what you just said, like there's so many parts of email marketing that have lasting power that social media doesn't have. And the kind of the big ones for me are, one, we have ownership of our email list. And so when you are focusing so much of your time and energy on social media, you're building a foundation of a business on unsteady ground. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again. And it's terrifying, really, where I will see messages from people, or people pop up in my feed and they're like, I had to start a new account because my Instagram shut my account down for no reason, or I got hacked and someone took over my account and they had tens or hundreds of thousands of followers and they're just gone. There's no way to reach those same people. And with your email list, if you have 5,000 or 100 or 10,000 or however many people, they're with you. Like, unless they unsubscribe, or even if you change platforms, you can take that list with you. So that the peace of mind of I'm not relying on, Meta to decide whether my account is usable or not. I like having that a little more control. The other thing is like what you just said about the longevity of it. Content on social media moves so fast, and it's good and it's bad. But the downside of it is that you can post something at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, and by 10:30 or 11 o'clock, that's already irrelevant because it's been pushed so far down into the feed. Whereas if you send an email at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning and your client doesn't check their email until 5 p.m. that afternoon, they're still going to see your email. Even if they just see it and delete it, at least your name and that subject line has been they've laid eyes on it. Or like you said, you come back to it 2 months later and they're like, oh yeah, I wanted to read that email. Maybe they're putting them all away into a folder of like, I want to read this at some point, and they'll come back to it. It's not getting completely pushed down on the list of like, oh, you're never going to see this because the feed's moving so fast. They're there and they're going to see it, whether they open it, delete it, read it, whatever.
Yeah. And I don't know. I love to look at like metrics and what's going on behind the scenes, and learning so much about email marketing over the years. I feel like I can segment my list, and I can reach out to those happy people that are always opening up my emails, and the statistics give you that. And and honestly, with social media, for instance, you sometimes don't know who just liked your page unless you have something on social media that's gathering that information. And how are you gathering that information? It's through email. It's through that email address. So I think if I were to pick, I don't think I could totally run my whole business on, email marketing. I would need some social media marketing too. So there is, social media marketing and email marketing, the terms are used so much. And a lot of people, and then there's networking in person. And as you know, that at least I feel the same way. At least I feel this way, I should say, is that the know, like, trust factor works so much better in person.
Yeah.
And so what I feel with the email marketing and the social media, it's more like it's those little hits over a time period to where finally they get to know, like, and trust you over a period of time. So it's a much longer space of time. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. That's what, what was that? The rule of 7 for a long time was like, they need to kind of interact with you in 7 different ways. And now I've read that it's more like 12, because again, everything on the internet moves so quick and people are just bombarded with content all day long, that now it's up to even like 12 or 14 touches or interactions with you before they actually feel like they have that connection with you. And so social media and email, but social media especially, I think it's one of those things where I say, like, it is such an incredible tool that we have access to essentially for free. I watched my parents they ran our family business my whole childhood. And I watched them like take out ads in the yellow pages and consider changing the name of their business because it started with a W and they were way down at the bottom of the list of like alphabetically in the phone book. And they would have to like work with magazines and pay thousands of dollars for these magazine ads and whatnot. And here I'm like, I can just click a button and reach hundreds or thousands of people globally. Like, it's insane. And so I don't want to discount the fact that like we have these incredible tools for really low cost or free. However, because social media is kind of this huge beast that like, it's almost overwhelming how many people are on it and how many people are creating and consuming content. We've lost the art of like in-person connections. And I do think that depending on the type of business you have, the more personal connections you can make. And like, I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day who was talking about how he had to start going back into his office. Now that he was work remote for a long time. And now he's going to back in, I think 2 days a week. And he's like, it's been so nice to get, and he travels for his job. So he's like, it's been so great to go and actually meet these people I've been talking over Zoom with or on phone calls with for 2 years. because he's like, it's much harder to say no to somebody that you've met in real life than it is someone you're just like randomly know on the internet. And so having those personal connections is huge, but I think it's all the puzzle pieces together. I think it's you can't isolate one thing and say, oh, only do in-person networking, only do social media, only do email. I think when you combine all these things together, that's when you get the magic mix of like all those 12 touch points or 14 or 20, however many you need now, but to make it all happen.
Yeah. And it's interesting. They don't use this anymore in business, but I was asked not recently, but probably over a year ago to speak on the marketing pie. And it's not a term that's used at all anymore. It's like old school for sure. But I realized there's something important about the marketing pie, because you can't totally grow your business just on social media, although some people have. Mm-hmm. And you can't totally do it through e-marketing, but some people have. And you can't do it, because of just networking, but some people have. But what ends up happening is that if you put all those together, you could actually become a real powerhouse. And there's other parts to that too, is like, there's, media attention. There's all this other stuff that you could put in that marketing pie. That's so important.
Yeah.
So I alluded to this earlier, but I always say that when you're on social media, you have to have a way of capturing names. Mm-hmm. And so I noticed that, a lot of people, have these quizzes or these, lead magnets, get this free ebook and stuff like that. And some lead magnets do better than others. Mm-hmm. So what would you say are a few things because I think it's important for my audience that if they're going to do this email marketing along with social media, that they should have a way of capturing names, and a lead magnet is a perfect way. What would you say is a few tips on how for creating a very strong lead magnet?
Oh, it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Okay. So I would say the first thing is you have to know what your audience wants from you. And that seems simple, but it's really not. Because throughout my, last 12 years or 13 years, however many years I've been doing this, of doing business and learning about email marketing and testing different lead magnets and stuff, I have done several that have just completely flopped. So for a while, for example, I'll give one is, I was a wedding photographer for several years, pretty much until COVID hit. I did wedding photography almost exclusively for about 5 years. And I was like, oh, I'm going to create a digital wedding planning guide that brides can download and they can print it off and it can be all these things. And I spent all this time creating this really beautifully designed wedding planning guide, and nobody downloaded it. And I remember asking a couple of my brides, I was like, I'm just curious, did you know I had this? They're like, oh yeah, we saw it on your site. I was like, okay, well, why? I'm just curious why you didn't download it. They're like, well, we hired a planner. And so our planners has all that stuff. And I realized a lot of my brides were the brides that were hiring someone to help them plan their wedding. I was shooting I wouldn't say upscale weddings, but a little bit more higher end weddings. And so a lot of them had wedding coordinators or planners that were doing all that for them. They didn't need my little DIY rinky dink thing I created in Canva. So I was like, oh, I created something my audience didn't really need. That's why it wasn't working. And so when I was able to change that up and started focusing on what they actually needed or wanted, and created a lead magnet that I did a couple different ones. One of them was more tailored towards how to choose your style, what style you're looking for, what is your style. I did create a quiz one time. And so I finally kind of honed in on okay, what is it that my actual client would find interesting or needs or helps them solve a problem that they have. And so that's the first thing, is you have to know your audience and you have to know what it is that they're looking to do. And then you create the thing that's going to help them. The second thing is you can do it in a variety of ways. I mean, I've seen webinars work really well for digital courses and products. I have seen free guides and downloadable things, cheat sheets, workbooks, checklists, all that kind of stuff. And then I've seen quizzes, and quizzes I think are really fun. And if your brand kind of is more, I would say it even has to be a fun brand, but if it's something that you there is a way for people to kind of create like a quiz of some kind that will give them like an answer, or like, you're this type, or you need this type of thing, then that's going to be the thing. So it's going back to, who is your audience? What do they need from you? And then what is a format that's really going to grab their attention? And we get so like inundated with content. And so if we can find a way to make it not feel like it's a lead magnet, because people know, they're like, oh, I have to give my email address. They're just trying to get my email address. So if you can create it in a way that's like, either one, oh my gosh, I have to have this thing, I'm willing to give them my email address for it. Or two, doesn't feel like a lead magnet. I think that's why people do a lot of quizzes, is because it doesn't feel like it's a lead magnet per se. But that way, like they're like, oh, I want to do this thing. I want to get these results. I want to have this, whatever it is you're offering. And then just make it super bite-sized and easy. I've seen people give lead magnets that were too overwhelming. Like the wedding planning guide, I was like, it was too much. And so if you can just kind of pare it down a little bit, keep it simple, you're just kind of giving them something to help them get like a small win. And then you move them into like the bigger items that you offer.
I love that. I once I had a similar issue once where I created a lead magnet and nobody downloaded it. And it all goes back to, is like, sometimes we think what other people need and we don't really think what they really need.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big blockers there. And I'll tell you, it's like, even I did a quiz. I have a couple quizzes out there, and sometimes they don't do well. And it depends on, because people do like to take quizzes. One thing I do suggest, though, if you really don't know what your people want out there, what I like to do is sometimes I'll do a quick survey and find out. And I've created a lot of lead magnets according to the survey, and they've actually they did work. So
no, I love that. And I do think that like, it also comes down to like testing and knowing, like, I think people get this idea in their head that they're like, oh, if I create this thing and it doesn't work, then I failed. Like, I can't do this. Like, oh, or that's why people are like, oh, well, email marketing didn't work for me because I tried this thing and it didn't work. But it's not about it doesn't have to work the first time. Like, don't be afraid to try different variations of it. Or if you're like, it's a really good topic, but maybe give it in a different format. Maybe instead of doing it in a quiz, do it in a, like a fun little guide of some kind, or a 5-part challenge, or, whatever, like kind of change up the format and then play around with it. It's all about experimenting and to see what works. It doesn't have to be perfect the very first time. And it rarely is.
Absolutely. I always say that you keep on tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it until it becomes perfect. And then you still find something to tweak it again.
Exactly.
So I'm going to switch gears real quickly here now. A lot of my audience are like seasoned entrepreneurs, or they're people who always did in-person networking, and they don't do much social media. And then some of them are people who are thinking of starting their own business, coming out of corporate, figuring out what they want to do. What is the one thing that you enjoy most, of doing business, running a business?
Yeah. I mean, I that's funny. It's a question I don't get asked very often. And it's something you think you would know the answer to right off the top of your head. I think for me, the best part is when I actually get to see someone find success. It reminds me of when I would be teaching, and I taught second grade for a long time. And one of my favorite things about teaching that age group was that they were so eager to learn new things. And I would see these kids who would struggle with something, and then all of a sudden they'd have this moment of like, oh, it makes sense. Like the light bulb moment, or the moment that it all clicks together. And they're like, yeah, I get it. And when I left teaching, I missed that a lot. Like, I missed having those moments with those kids. And now I realize like I'm doing the same thing, and I get to have those same moments with people, just in a different format, with, grownups in a different setting. But for me, that's the highlight, is and that's when I find I've done a lot of like inner reflection of like, what is it that really brings me joy? what do I walk away from feeling energized versus what do I walk away from feeling drained? And doing things like this, like these podcast interviews where I'm having a conversation with somebody, like an actual person face to face, even though it's over Zoom. Or when I go and like, I'll have a client that's local and we'll go have a coffee date and we'll just talk business. Those are the moments where I'm like, I leave feeling energized, excited, like ready to take on the world. And so that to me is the part of my business that keeps me going when I have those moments where I'm like, oh, I am so done dealing with, finances or taxes or cleaning out my inbox. Like those moments where you're like, I don't want to do this part. The other part keeps me going.
Yeah. It's so funny because it's that energy. I see the difference. Like when I'm like working home and doing client fulfillment, it's not the same energy, but when I'm out like speaking or on a podcast, or it's like the energy that happens. I love that.
Yeah.
We always, everybody talks about the glamour of owning our own businesses. And yeah, you have that laugh. Everybody has that laugh when I say that. But your friends, that's so cool that you're doing that. I could never do that. But there's always a downside of it. What would you say is the biggest struggle that you've had in growing your business?
The biggest struggle, I think, is the loneliness of it. And that sounds really weird to say sometimes, but it's like, it is when you are creating something by yourself. I don't think people talk about how often you spend time alone. I went from teaching in an environment where I was around people all the time. I mean, I was in a classroom with kids, or I was in a building with other adults. And even when I wasn't in the classroom and I had a different role, I was in and out of schools and offices, and I was, speaking to groups and things. I was always around people. And so when I started working from home, I was like, it's just me. Like, it's just me by myself for hours at a time. And sometimes I would go for a day or two at a time and would not speak to another human until like my family came home in the evening. And so that was really hard because I consider myself like an ambivert. Like I'm not an extrovert, but I'm not totally an introvert either. I'm kind of in the middle. And I really struggled with the fact for a long time of like, oh, I don't have a team to do this with. Like I don't have other people who are in the same boat as me. And I had to go find those people and kind of became friends with them and built relationships that way. But even within my business, it's just everything kind of comes back to like, I'm the decision maker. I'm the whatever. I'm the one implementing it all. I'm the one who like, when it fails, I take it personally, like all the things. And so I think that's been the biggest struggle, is just feeling like I'm alone in this sometimes, and then forcing myself to get out of my comfort zone and create a community of people that I can go to and be like, oh, this is just, I'm struggling today, or celebrate things with and feel like I'm not quite so alone in this journey.
Absolutely. Again, there's a lot of people listening to this that own their own businesses, and wherever they're at, maybe very happy in their business, maybe not very happy in their business. What is one piece of advice that you could give that would move them forward today?
Try to not focus on the super far future. I think that we set goals. You always hear this, set goals for yourself, set goals. And we set these lofty goals and we're looking so far down the road that we forget to just look right in front of us and take a step today. And so one of the things I do every morning is I have a little sticky note on my mirror. So I'm getting ready in the morning. It says, what are you going to do today to find success in your life? And it's like, what's the little thing I'm going to do? Is it one little thing? Is it 5 little things? Is it one big thing? Like, for example, for me today, I'm going to record this webinar presentation that I've been kind of meaning to do for a couple of weeks now. And I'm like, that's my one step forward today, is I'm going to record that. Maybe tomorrow it's going to be, I'm going to send out an email to my email list. Maybe the next day it's going to be, I'm going to batch create content for my social media, but it's little bitty things. And so I think when you start focusing on like, what's the one thing you can do to move yourself forward today, you'll look back a month from now and you're 30 steps forward. And so the big picture is important. Don't get me wrong. You have to have that big goal, but don't let the big goal overwhelm you and keep you from taking the small step today.
Absolutely. Well, Kendra, thank you very much. And if somebody has resonated with you by listening to this podcast today, what is something, how can I get in touch with you? And maybe you'd like to offer a little something?
Yeah. So you can find me at Girl Means Business, either on Facebook or Instagram, and then go to girlmeansbusiness.com. That's my home base. You can get access to my podcast there, which is just called Girl Means Business. You can get access to my resources, find out how to work with me. I've got tons of like blog content, all the things. And then if you're listening to this, you're thinking, okay, I've heard y'all talk about email marketing. I kind of want to get that started in my business, or I haven't really put a lot of emphasis on that. I have a free email marketing starter kit. And so it walks you through everything you need to get started with email marketing. So how to choose the platform that's right for you, kind of the things you talked about, how to create a lead magnet that your audience is going to really want, and then how to actually kind of get that lead magnet into their hands, and then what to do once they have that. So it's very quick and easy to consume, but it will get you those steps into getting started. And you can find that at girlmeansbusiness.com/email kit. And that's free. You can go grab that. And I think you'll find it really helpful for helping you get started.
That's awesome. I want to thank you again. And until next week, everyone, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at Biz Gone Social for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.